Pete's house. We're going off the page, off the script, because it's the way I do rock and roll around here. We got the Terps in the Big Ten tournament. We got that covered. We got the Caps and the Wizards on the West Coast, including the Wizards going to Portland, the home of my next guest. And, of course, we got the NFL Combine. We're going to be blowing you up with WNST text here over the next couple of days, all brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard, when the Ravens make their cuts and hopefully some signings. But it is baseball season. Mr. Angelos was kind enough to deliver a baseball game to me on Sunday. I enjoyed it very much. I wanted a Trumbo Jumbo from Mike Bordick, but I did not get that. This guy does baseball, and I'm really looking forward to having a few adult beverages with him in his hometown, one of the very few places I've never been. Never been to Portland, Oregon. He is Bizball Maury on Twitter. He is by far one of our favorite guests to have on here at WNST.net. He's always gracious with his time and his insights. He has spent time with Rob Manfred here recently on the eve of the 17 opening day, and you can find him out of Forbes, where he does the good work of journalism, a lost art. His facts are not alternative. He is Maury Brown. We welcome him back on. Also, lead guitarist and rock and roller in the AC/DC band Shoot the Thrill. I want to point that out just to let people. That's going to give you some street cred, Maury, I think.
Well, it's always a pleasure. It's always a pleasure to hang out with you, Nestor.
All right, well, let's go, man. Rob Manfred, did you ask him where my press pass is in Baltimore? Did you tell him my cousin's in the Hall of Fame? If I ever run into him, and I did run into him, I had one run-in, Maury, with Rob. Can I tell you my Rob Manfred story? Because this is, you're going to like this, okay? I got to get a sip of water to tell this one. So when they were voting on Rob Manfred, it happened at the Baltimore Hyatt. I could throw a golf ball, far. I could hit the Hyatt from where I live with a golf ball. My wife was just like bald and sickly, but doing well enough that she wanted to go for walks every day. And we walked to the Hyatt during the deliberation process, where Rob Manfred was thrown out of the ballroom on the second floor underneath the glass ceiling, where I sat with various media members. I think John Oran was there. I think Eric Fisher was definitely there. And Rob Manfred walked into the coffee shop and ordered a coffee and entertained the media briefly, as he was very, very nervous about being elected. It wasn't a time to say, hey, MFer, if they make you commissioner, I better get my press pass back for the Orioles. But if I saw him, I probably would say something like that. So
that's a great story. Hey, man, that selection process was interesting in the sense that there was really some talk about possibly Tom Werner becoming the commissioner.
He was sweating. Let me tell you this. It was not a done deal when he was very, very nervous getting a coffee, and he was kind of just talking to people just to sort of like pass time. You know what I mean? Like, literally, I saw him in a very uncomfortable state, and that was not a good state to approach him and say, hi, my name's Nestor. I love the Orioles, and I've been covering sports for 32 years, and I can't get my press pass. So it wasn't a time to bring that up. But I know you. Tell me about your relationship with Rob Manfred, because apparently not a bad dude.
No, I mean, I'm trying to remember the first time I talked to him. It would have been prior to the All-Star game in Arizona and Phoenix. So, gosh, when was that? That would have been 2004?
Yeah, I mean, a good decade and a half ago, long time ago.
So I had talked to him a few times about some of the financial stuff. Because Bud was really Bud was kind of off in his own world and around some of this stuff.
Well, Manfred was kind of the heavy and the prick against Don Fear in 01, right, when it looked like they were going to go Armageddon for the second time, right?
Yeah, and I mean, and that was the reason why, and for what I cover, Rob was always in some ways more important for me to talk to, and he was, he always struck me, is not that Bud was Bud, Bud was who he was, and I have different feelings about him. So people either love or hate these guys, right? But I look at...
Well, I kind of hate him already because I don't have a press pass after 21 years. So, I do tend to lose respect for people when they throw the media out. You know what I'm saying?
You should never do that. But the thing that worked with, or the thing that was with Bud was I've found Bud to be the right guy at a particular time. in baseball's history, he seemed to be the guy at that particular time.
Dude, he made them a lot of money, man. And it was, if you want to talk about coup d'etat, I mean, the whole thing with Fay Vincent, it was a hostile takeover of the integrity of baseball by and large, and we're a quarter of a century out on it, and, it is what it is now. It's a business that runs a monopoly that acts sort of in and around Congress and sort of gets by with the antitrust thing, but it is what it is. I mean, it sort of runs sideways with the law in our country and what should be in many ways, right?
Well, I mean, I guess I look at it this way, man. I mean, when you start to say that baseball, Major League Baseball, is not interstate commerce, and we have teams flying around the country all day, every day,
paying taxes in various states now because the states demand it.
They hold on to it like grim death. I think it's something that is, of course, exceptionally important to them. And
well, it was a huge part of why the Nationals wound up here. When I researched it for the book that I did on Angelo's, it was unbelievable, the Washington Post's political pull on if Washington doesn't get a team, bloody hell's going to happen with that antitrust. I mean, that was pretty clear if you go back and do the work on it, right?
Yeah, it is. And, I mean, the difficulty about that is that franchise, the ability to control franchises within corporations and is, really something that they try not to monkey with. And so, I mean, it was an interesting story, but moving forward to now, the thing that, so I wanted to talk to Rob about a few topics. So I'll start off with the stuff that's now live online. One of which was that we started to talk about pace of play, and so, the problem that I think the media hasn't done a good job with, and fans have latched onto, and everybody's talking about like how much incremental time is. It's like, there's only a handful of these intentional walks, and it's only 4 pitches, and you're really shaving off a couple of seconds. And I equate it to this: hey, man, if it's 15 seconds of watching paint dry, it's 15 seconds of watching paint dry, and so the point that Rob and the league is trying to make is it's trying to get the pace of the game, not the time of the game, but the pace of it, whether it's, because like he said, it's really kind of out our control. A 2-hour and 15-minute game or a 3-hour and 15-minute game, there's, based upon just how the nature of the game is, you can't really do too much about.
It's like playing chess, dude. It could take all day. I mean, and to some degree, I think people who love baseball don't dislike this part of baseball. This is about trying to appeal to new people. I mean, I've gone to NBA games recently. They play music when the ball's in play. It sounds like a video arcade. It sounds like Vegas because they're trying to appeal to new people. When baseball was trying to appeal to new people with the designated hitter 40 years ago, right? I mean, they're always trying to find new people, but I find this to be a lot of hullabaloo about not much. I mean, honestly, for me, I think if you're invested, you're invested.
Well, that's, sure. I mean, people like you and I are, of course, are going to be invested. The hardcore fans are going to be invested. I guess I look at it like hockey, man. I mean, hockey's probably got, in my mind, the most diehard fans that there are. It's just, you just can't grow it beyond a certain size due to the nature of the game. Baseball, on the other hand, has started to look at things because there's more metrics in play. They're like, hey, the number of batted balls are down, right? We got a lot of strikeouts going on. We got a lot of, grounding out into the shift. We got a lot of things going on. But so you brought up something, Nestor, that I had wondered about, because we got all this talk about, just to sign the guy on an intentional base on ball, just give him the base. And it's talking about crazy things like putting a runner on second in extra innings and all this other stuff.
Oh, man, don't F with that. I mean, come on.
And I don't think that they will. I think that they're just experimenting with
We got a beer league softball team here in Baltimore for you, Maury. They're called the Orioles. We don't need to turn the whole sport into beer league softball,
Yeah. But the one thing I did want to ask him was, I'm like, look, man, you've got something right now that half the league does, and that is that you've got the designated hitter in the American League. And if you were really wanted to look at something, you could put it in the NL. You'd have less intentional walks. You'd have more, you'd have more quality hitting. And
so who stands up and fights for that? Like, who's going to piss on that? Like, is there a faction of National League owners dating back to Ted Turner and Marge Schott that would be upset? I mean, who are these National League owners that wouldn't want a designated hitter and want more excitement in their parks? I mean, maybe there's some baseball people, but I mean, by and large, what harm would the designated hitter do in the National League if they brought it into more?
Well, Rob doesn't want to mess with the National League game. That's exactly how he put it. I don't want to really. I think the National League game has a place in the game.
Well, there's two different kinds of games being played now, right? So
there is.
that does add variety in the most conservative realm you can imagine in American sport baseball, right?
Well, and in baseball it's odd that way, right? I mean, what other sport has different size ballpark? You have different size basically playing areas, and every ballpark is different. You have different set of rules for half of them. I mean, that's.
But dude, let's think about this. I did 30 ballparks in 30 days. I promise you this: if Oakland ever got a new ballpark, they would want to make it look like something old. That's all baseball ever wants to do is make it look like it did when it was black and white. I mean, I love Citi Field, but the people that love Citi Field because it looked like Evans Field, right? Or the Polo Grounds or whatever. So they're always trying to go backwards. Meanwhile, when the NFL builds something, they build the thing that birds are killing themselves trying to fly into in Minnesota, and they're out in Los Angeles trying to build the Taj Mahal, and hell, Jerry's trying to get money for his competitor to get another Taj Mahal built in Las Vegas and get Super Bowls in Vegas every 5 years. So these guys aren't dummies about this, but with baseball, it really always. Getting anything done in baseball, including publishing the unwritten rules, Maury, it's difficult to do. Everything moves glacially, right?
It does. But I was surprised, Nestor, because here's the biggest surprise that came out of the interview. I said, hey, if you really wanted to really increase pace, the thing that has happened in the last 30 years that has slowed the game down more than anything is the advent of television and commercials. And he goes, I think we should absolutely look at this. And this floored me. This floored me because there's, of course, there's revenues associated to this, or ad revenues for the networks. But he's like, we have some contractual obligations that are involved here, and we have, a certain amount of inventory that we have to deal with. He goes, but I'm not the only one talking about this. He goes, Boston Red Sox owner Tom Werner said this and said we should think about looking at it. And so this was really surprising. This is the one thing that universally I heard not a single negative thing about. I could find nothing negative, not one thing on social media, and it got a ton of traction that said, hey, let's not take commercials out. Of course, everybody wants less commercials.
Well, they could put commercials more constructively within the framework of the game. I mean, they've already got, this pitching change is brought to you by that. Mm-hmm. This nut scratch is brought to you by that. This, on-deck circle shot is brought to you by, they've got all of that sort of built in. I sort of feel like the time between innings really is a warm-up time, A. I think it's a break time for the umpires, B, to go pee, do whatever they need to do. But I can tell you this from having gone to every ballpark, Maury. I mean, I really did this, and sat in all these ballparks. The between innings things here in Baltimore specifically, and in places like Milwaukee and Washington where they run sausages and they run presidents around, or whatever they're running around the ballpark. Those type of things, and the mustard and the ketchup and the relish races, and the find the crab under the claw races and all that stuff, and the seventh inning stretch. And John Denver could do a 4.5-minute version of Thank God I'm a Country Boy in Baltimore, and OK Blue Jays could be 6-minute long up in Toronto, and people would eat it up. I mean, take me out to the ballpark in Chicago. If that thing bleeds 4.5 minutes, that's good on Bill Murray who's singing it that day, or Eddie Vedder or whatever. So I think some of the between the innings stuff, and I know it does add up, but I feel like it gives me time to go take a leak, get a beer, answer a text. You know what I mean? Like, I watch baseball every night of my life. It's what I do. And I don't – sometimes I love when the games end at 9:30, right? I do. But I'm sort of invested till 10:15 or 10:30. Like, I'm figuring it's not getting over – not like an NBA game, right? Where NBA game starts, it's going to get over in 2 hours and 15 minutes. NFL, you sort of know 3 hours. Baseball, some nights you get a gem at 2:12, right? Some nights you do.
Well, yeah, and to me, more of a good thing is a good thing, right? I mean, good, crisp baseball. I don't care if it's a 3-hour or 4-hour game, if it's good and entertaining. But I think that they're really trying, that's where this thing is at. It's like, sure, you're going to have your commercial breaks, Nestor. You're still going to be able to get to your texts and all those things. But if you trim a little bit of time off of it, I think that it keeps them engaged, and you're having less channel flipping. The other thing that we talk about that is the big story, I think, that isn't being really well covered is 7 of the clubs really quietly and without any fanfare extended netting past the dugouts. This is a fairly big deal to me in the sense that while I don't have any empirical evidence to show whether there are more fan injuries due to foul balls or bats flying off into the crowds, the one thing that has changed is we have a 24/7, 365 news cycle now, and we have social media. And these things get out there and they become fairly instantaneous. And so I think that you're going to see extended netting happen slowly. But Rob this was the brunt of the conversation that I wanted to have. Because there was a Marxist poll that was done last year that the majority of people are in favor of this. Now, it's not by very much, right?
I can tell you, going to hockey games all the time, and I'm an old school hockey guy, it's been very, very good all the way around. I would feel better sitting with my 8-year-old daughter if I had one, down near the ice. The puck's nasty. I mean, the other night they had an incident with the Caps, and Ovechkin came running over with a towel. I mean, literally, in the middle of the game, he came sliding over on the ice to help a fan. And, you hate to see that. That's a nightmare for everyone. I mean.
Well, so you hit on this. You said something real critical here, and this is where this poll is and where things shift. So the majority are say, yeah, the closer that I am to the plate, ergo behind the dugouts, then the more I'm going to want netting. But the minute that you brought in and you just asked women, or if you asked people when they were bringing kids, then it jumped up to 77%. And I think that it's just a matter of time. Now, what the league has told me and what Rob told me was the difference between hockey. Right, we had to have a little girl get killed in hockey, basically, to get netting. But the difference is that all the arenas are the same size. Baseball's different, and the designs of the ballparks are different. And I'm going to get into this where, now in the newer ballparks, it was really about getting fans even closer to the game, having them right there so that they're really on top of the players.
Well, those club seats in Cleveland sort of changed that. I mean, those dugouts, literally in the dugout. And now, most teams in the league have seating like that. And, I've sat in those seats at Dodger Stadium where – I'm there at 5:30 and 2 fastball pitchers are pitching, and I said every time a right-handed batter gets up, I was down the first base line. I said to my wife, I'm like, you really need to have your heads up in these seats. I mean, we're not screwing around here,
No, and that's it, right? I mean, there's been some studies done around reaction times for the players, of course. Players, they've seen thousands and thousands of balls hit off bats and can really track them better. And that's, they're going to do that. Somebody like me goes to a lot of games, I might be able to do it as well. But I tell you what, man, there's always that thing. It's like, oh, it's that guy bringing his glove. No, man, I want to have my glove there. If something's coming at me, I want to be able to
play it. I tell everyone, I play it barehanded. I mean, that's the game. You ever go to a ball game with me, Maury? I'm a pickle, bro. I mean, ball goes up in the air, I'm playing it. You know what I mean? No matter what. We did our friend got hit in Tampa with a foul ball that came off the upper deck. It hit her in the shoulder. We didn't see the ball. I mean, literally, we kind of like we didn't keep our eye on the flying ball. The other thing I saw on my tour, Maury, that's a cool thing that's happening in baseball. It's like hockey. Seattle had it, and San Francisco on my tour. That was 2 years ago now. They have the ushers stop you from going to your seat until the end of the batter. And I always thought, and I really thought this at Camden Yards, because my dad sort of brought me up the right way, Memorial Stadium in the 70s and the 80s. You don't go in front of people in the middle of an at-bat or in the middle of a pitch or a 3-1 count. Etiquette, this basic fan etiquette was really lost at Camden Yards because, keep in mind, Mark, Camden Yards got full. I mean, it's 3.6, 3.8 million people, from 92 till 99, and everybody's there, and they're not necessarily all baseball fans. I would just be shocked at how few people were watching the game, And I know that's been something, too, that they want – part of the experience of going to the game is they want guys like you and I to still have a good time at the game, right?
Well, and that's the key, right? So is it really going to start to mess with that sort of thing? And I think that last year when I asked about this, that was the thing. They were like, well, we're hearing a lot of phone calls, from fans saying don't do this. And I think that they, of course, they didn't do anything. Like the Marcis poll was like a true poll, and I didn't ask. The league doesn't have, or at least isn't presenting any data that supports that one way or another. But I think this thing where you've got 7 ballparks now, Nestor, that have netting now past the dugouts. And I think that it's just a matter of time before you have that. There are going to be some people that are going to be really upset about this. I think that they'll all get adjusted to it. I think that they'll all be mad as hell for about a month.
I bet the Yankees will be the loudest. What do you think? They spend the most on the seats there, right?
Yeah, I mean, those seats, and that's the thing that I always get to, right? Now, it's a little bit different, right? So the one argument is, hey, some of the most expensive seats, if not the most expensive seats, are right behind home plate. And those, of course, all have netting now, right? We've had that. Now, when you move down when you start moving further down the baselines, your head's turning more down toward home plate, and therefore netting could start to get into a thing where you could have your vision potentially obstructed. But the materials are getting thinner, and I think that they're just going to get to the point to where I think that there's just so much bad. There's so many injuries that happen, and this isn't just in the majors, but in the minors. And it's happening in the minors as well, Nestor. This is something else. So as an example, the single A or double A Mariners team in Nashville has installed extended netting, but the Mariners aren't, and they have no plans for it this season. And I think that what you're going to see is, as more of these stories come up asking about this, and you start to see all the injuries that are happening, I think it just becomes they run into a problem, because it's like you said, the league
one incident's one too many, quite frankly, right? Literally.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. So how many? I think that the injuries that we saw at Fenway, where we had that gal taken out on a stretcher, was just really bad.
Well, I mean, at Fenway, that third base line has been held for since Ted Williams, since Babe Ruth, right? I mean, that's just, those seats are, there's a reason they don't build ballparks like that anymore.
Yeah, and so I think that, I think that you're just going to eventually start to see it. Do I think that it needs to go beyond that? Like we see in Japan, they have netting all the way around. No, we're not going to get that. The further
they
that
also
you're
have
away,
noodles in a
more
box that I
reaction time
want to
that
get
you have.
to. So, yeah.
So I don't think you're going to see that. But Nestor, I honestly believe that within the next few seasons, you'll see all the ballparks will have netting past the dugouts. And my question about it was like, hey, you got these teams already doing this sort of thing. And I think that it was put to me this way. It was kind of like states' rights right now, like we have in politics, right? Keep the federal government out of this. It sounds like you're dishing this over to the clubs. And the response to that was, there is nothing done arbitrarily that way. It is all done by recommendations from the commissioner's office and the league. So they made their recommendations. Some clubs are going to adopt it sooner than others. Some may not do it at all, I think. But I think eventually they all will. It's just a matter of time and trying to get it to happen in a way where they can get some more data and make this sort of thing happen. And so I think it'll be interesting. A lot of people are probably listening right now and are not happy. They're going to go, gosh, we've gotten to this point. But the league continues to want to grow fans. And if you want to continue to make it a family-friendly thing, I don't know what to tell you, man, but even my 15-year-old have a heck of a time getting some tailing fastball, tailing foul ball that's a screamer into the stands. And he played baseball. So I just think that you're going to get into it to where it just eventually gets to that. I think it's just a matter of time.
He interviewed Rob Manfred. He does all things the business of sports and baseball at Forbes. He is Bizball Maury out on Twitter. My dear friend Maury Brown from Portland, Oregon, where I am headed for some refreshments and some U2 at some point in May. The World Baseball Classic, Maury, I am busting out my Venezuela jersey. I'll be wearing that. Those who want to see Jonathan Scope play at 4:30 in the morning can do so with the Dutch, amongst others. This is affecting most of the teams in Major League Baseball in some way. You hope pitchers' arms don't fall off. I don't really think this is in any way mandatory. I sort of get that they do it and sort of kind of why they do it. I just don't know why they're so excited about it. I get it, but I don't get it. It feels unnecessary. It feels a little forced. And I know around baseball circles there's a mixed bag on this thing.
Yeah, and I think that's the perfect way to put it, is a mixed bag, in that I remember when the first one rolled out, and it was, of all things, it was New Year's Day, and I was doing national radio somewhere and talking a little bit about stuff, and I touched on the WBC, and my phone rings. And I look at it, and I'm like, I don't know who this is, and I go, hello, and hey, Maury, this is Gene Orza from the Players Association. I just happened to be driving between Seattle to Portland to go visit family, and I just got to ask you, why didn't you talk more about the WBC? And the funny thing about it is, I think that questioning, or that why aren't we getting more attention about this, this event that we do every few years, there's still that. I don't know if it catches on. I think that the thing that makes me sad, Nestor, is I look at how it's received in other countries, and it seems to be pretty doggone popular.
Well, I attended the Dodgers USA game at or not Dodgers, I should say. It was a Japan USA game at Dodger Stadium. I guess it was 8 years ago now. Dice K pitched against Roy Oswalt. Brian Roberts hit a home run. Davey Johnson was the manager, and it was one of the most exciting things. My wife and I have video from that night. We sat behind home plate. Ichiro, Mania was in full blossom, and there were 45,000 Japanese fans there, and about 6,000 American fans, and about 4,000 empty seats. And it was like being in Japan. It was insane, quite frankly.
Well, and that's the thing that they're trying to tap into. I think they really are trying to get into some of the interest that, or the I don't know if pageantry is the right word that we use, but really the interest and the real excitement that goes along in other countries and how they receive baseball. We've become so placid about it, just relaxed, and it's different. It's entirely different in Japan, or certainly in Latin America. But the idea of getting a true World Series, the difficulty, of course, is just they can't get the players, and I don't think the clubs want to have their key players doing it. Certainly pitchers.
And this thing's kind of weird because you're on pitch count, right? So, I mean, in reality, it's not a full-out competition. It's more like an all-star game, quite frankly.
It is a bit like that. And I think that the thing that's important is this isn't something that just, Bud Selig kicked off and then Manfred's picking up. I mean, it's been something that's been jointly done between the players and the league for some time now, and that they really want to try and turn it into a quote-unquote true World Series. Now, is it going to ever get there? I'm not so sure. At least not in this country. I don't see it. But it's designed to continue to grow the game internationally, and I think that it does that. The bad thing, of course, is, like you said, I mean, if I'm going to want to watch games, I'm going to have to get up at 4:30 Eastern to start watching baseball. And so, a guy like me out here on the West Coast, I'm either staying up until 1:30 in the morning, or I'm DVRing it. But it is baseball. It gives us true, honest-to-goodness baseball in the middle of spring training, and I see nothing wrong with that. I mean, I'm one of those guys, if they could figure out a way to do baseball all year long, I would watch it. But it gets us into it early. Right now, I think it's kind of a dead time unless you're a really hardcore basketball fan or hockey fan. And then, so it gives us something, and I enjoy it in that sense. I mean, you always see something that's different that you didn't expect. And whether it's, like you said, in the Netherlands or somebody like that, it just makes for an intriguing baseball. So, I think that it'll be interesting this time around, and I'm always looking forward to watching it.
All right, what tour are you looking forward to the most this summer here, Maury? I got to get a little rock and roll in here with you. Of course, the guitar player for Shoot the Thrill, AC/DC cover band out there in Portland, Oregon. What do you got going on this summer?
Well, I'm going to go see Mastodon. That's the one I'm actually the most excited about. So
okay.
My tastes run pretty heavy, Nestor. I am really I've always been a real heavy hard rocker kind of guy, and so.
Well, Maiden's coming around. This
they're
year.
Not coming close enough for me. My kid talking. We might make it. My kid wants to go see him. I've seen him a bunch and hung out with Steve Harris, and he's always been fantastic. And they're a great band and love them. But No, that's really the one that I'm looking forward to.
I'm pissed I missed Priest last year. When they went around with Halford, I'm upset about that. We have the M3 festival here every year, so a lot of the Hairspray bands get together from the '80s, and it's a big hootenanny around here. So we do get we get some big shows, and they're they've done various metal things on the East Coast as well. So there's a big calling for that, as you know.
Yeah. And the other thing is I'm going to go see Radiohead. That'll be the other one I'm going to go take in. And I'm probably going to go see the guy I've never seen. And although he's starting to get up there a little bit, I'm really interested to go see I'm going to go see Billy Joel because it's Billy Joel.
Well, you should go see him. He's awesome.
I think it'll be interesting to go see that.
Yeah, I saw him in Frankfurt, Germany about 6 months ago. I've seen it. He was in Baltimore a summer and a half ago, played the football stadium, and it was on my anniversary. It was one of those perfect evenings. So you'll have a great time with Billy Joel. That'll work for you. Well, look, man, we'll catch up again soon. Congrats on the interview with Rob Manfred and Pace of Play and, all the other stuff that's going on with baseball and covering all that. Hey, in about 3 weeks, we'll have, real baseball, right? So it'll be opening day where there'll be the Orioles and pitching and all that. So we'll get into that next time, but it's always great to catch up with you.
All right, Nestor, man. Thanks so much, man, and you have a great one.
You got it. He is Bizball Maury out on Twitter, and, of course, you can find him out at Forbes as well, covering the business of baseball and sports and where they intersect. He's been doing it a long time. No one does it better than Bizball Maury. He is Maury Brown out of Portland, Oregon. He and I are going to get together for some refreshments in May as I take off for the U2 tour. I'll be running around with them a little bit. Hey, man, you got to live. You just got to live. Let's face it. Let's get through this. The Caps are going to win the Stanley Cup this year, so I'm not doing any traveling in May or June. It's true. Well, a little bit in May, but not in June. Not when not when the Cup's going on. I've already made that call. I'm clearing my schedule. I know you guys will say he'll be in Ocean City. I don't care. I'm clearing my schedule. Terps in the Big Ten this week. We got the Orioles in spring training, and, of course, the Caps and the Wizards on the West Coast in the aforementioned Portland in the case of the Wizards later on in the week. Nasty at WNST.net finds me. We're going to London with the Ravens. If you want to get on the trip, throw me an email and click on the Trips tab out at WNST.net. I'm on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, and if there's any breaking news on the Ravens this week, you're going to get it first on our WNST Tech Service. It's all brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. Dennis will be here on Thursday as well. I'm Nestor. This is WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore. And we never stop talking Baltimore sports.